So much good stuff to share. So excited to talk to you about how I paid off $200K in my student loan debt this year and what you can learn from that, what you can do to take what I went through and apply it to your business. Whether you have debt or not, this is going to be really useful because it's just sort of the way I want you to think about money, mindset, business, all the things. So I hope this is going to be good and hope it's going to be exciting. And I am just like over the moon excited. So I'm pumped to talk about it because I'm still trying to like integrate that it's done. So thanks for letting me do that with you guys. Hey, Alicia, Happy New Year. Hey, Suzanne, Happy New Year. All right, cool. So I'll just do $200K in student loan debt. One, because I got 2 master's degrees from private schools, so it's part of it. 2, because I just did not really grasp or understand the concept of money very well in much of my early 20s. And so it felt like free money at the time. And I definitely overspent in ways that I shouldn't have and used it in ways that I shouldn't have. But I'm so grateful for that in a way. And I want to start with that because, I think so often we don't see our mistakes as stuff that we can be grateful for. We can be like, oh, I'm such an idiot. I got $200K in debt because I didn't pay attention to money in the way I should have, or I didn't think about it in the way I should have, or I did this wrong, or I spent this wrong, or I should have never gotten that, or whatever. And we do that to ourselves in business all the time, right? And I just want to say that if you can take the stance of I'm so grateful that I learned that lesson because I will not do that again. I'm so grateful that I learned that lesson because it has helped me so much in how I treat money now. I'm so grateful that I learned that lesson early in life. I'm so grateful that I had that experience because I know I won't create it again. All of those things. So whatever that is for you, whether that's racking up a stupid amount of debt because you weren't treating money in the way that you should have, or spending in a way that didn't serve you in your business, or I'm so grateful for that experience because, right? And that totally changes the game, where I think so often we spend a lot of time going, I'm so mad at myself that I did that. And now I have to be punished for that. And what I feel like is I had an expensive lesson and it was worth it. And I would invest in that lesson again. Does that make sense? I had a really expensive lesson and it will stick with me forever because it was a really expensive lesson. You know what I mean? And so that's the first thing I just want to share, whether it's debt for you or business investments or whatever it is. If you can take that perspective of giving yourself grace and finding the gratitude in it, it's going to be so much easier to step out of it because you actually took the lesson from it instead of staying in it and staying stuck in it and beating yourself up about it, right? One of my most favorite things about you is your way to be thankful for past decisions. Thank you, Maggie. Absolutely. Absolutely. So grateful for the Lacey who didn't get money because now I'm the Lacey who does get money, right? So grateful for those bad choices because it made me want to make better ones. So that's the first thing. I promise I'm going to give you a ton of practical stuff, but we are going to talk about some mindset stuff first because I think that if you know me, mindset, strategy, and execution, I think the mindset piece is always the biggest piece. I think it's the foundational piece. So that's the first one, which is being grateful for whatever decisions got you here and finding the gratitude and the lesson in it. The second one, and I talk about this a lot, but I just cannot talk about it enough because it is the thing that always makes the difference, is deciding, right? Hey, Jennifer, Happy New Year. Yes, gratitude for the lessons, exactly. So deciding. So I've had this debt since, when did I graduate? Let's say 2014, I think is when I graduated with my second master's, something like that, 2015, 2014, whatever, somewhere in that range. So I probably have had it for 3 or 4 years, I guess. And obviously longer in the sense of that was when I finally got out of school, right? But it was building up for many years. But regardless, there was not really a point in time prior to this year where I had fully decided that I wanted to pay it off. Like, there was I wouldn't have been mad about it. And there was a part of me that, of course, like desired that, but it never felt like a full decision, if that makes sense, right? So a full decision in the sense of like, I am done with this. I'm no longer available for this. I have decided I am paying them off, and I am now a match for, oops, I almost exited the page. Now I am a match for paying them off. So like at the beginning of 2018, at the beginning of 2018, I fully decided like, it is now my time to pay these off. Like, I am done with this. Like, it didn't actually bother me that much before then. Like, and maybe it should have, but it doesn't really matter. But the point is, like, I wasn't feeling pain or feeling discomfort or feeling issue with the student loan debt at that point. Mostly because I was making decisions and focused elsewhere, which I'll talk about that too. But I really came to that decision of like, now I want this done. Like, now I am done with this. Now I am ready to step in to this like place where these are paid off. That decision was so powerful because I didn't know how. I wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to like do this one thing this year and then it'll get paid off. But I just felt certain that I was done with that. Right? And I felt very clear on making that decision. And I want to say that too, because I feel like most of the time we're not getting what we want is because we haven't fully decided on it. We have not fully committed to it. So one of the things I would love to ask you if you're watching is, what are you fully deciding on and committing to in 2019? Like, there's so much power in like clearly deciding and clearly stating that, because when I was like, this is the year that I am done having all this debt, the most like miraculous set of circumstances occurred to help that be true. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit too. But also, very practically speaking, it changed my actions, right? So when I said, hey, Heaven, hey, Anissa, thank you guys for joining me. Okay, so tell me what you're committed to, what you're deciding on in 2019. So when I made that decision, like, yes, the universe started rearranging itself. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But also very practically, I started changing what I did too, right? So when the deciding part is so important, because it changes how everyone else shows up for you, how the universe can rearrange itself for you, but it also fundamentally changes how you show up for you. Almost every time I have a client that's like not getting what they want, it's because they haven't decided and aren't fully showing up for themselves like it's true. You know what I mean? So the decision part was huge. It also meant that I had to let the magic happen. I had to detach. I had to surrender, right? So like paying off $200K in a year is a big feat. And I definitely did not have this like perfectly laid out plan at the beginning of the year. I just kept feeling into the feeling of like, I am done with this. I am ready to be debt free. I'm done with this. I'm ready to be debt free, right? And so I had to do a lot of surrendering around what that was going to look like and how that was going to happen. And listen, even if it hadn't happened this year, which of course I'm so glad I made that decision, I'm so glad it did, me staying in that decision place would have just moved me so much closer to that, right? And so I think that's such a big piece that's missing when we want to do something big, when we want a big result, is the first thing we do is we go to the how. Like, okay, how much do I just put away each month to do this? Whatever, right? And the first thing we have to go to is the, what do I want? What's my decision? And what does it feel like to already have it? I have found that to be the most miraculous thing in my life. And, you know, I think that sometimes when we're watching or hearing someone else say that, it can be easy to eye roll a little bit or feel like, I don't know, like that's I've decided on things before and it hasn't happened. But I would make a very big bet that you cannot think of many things in your life that you have fully decided on, and then your actions aligned with that decision, meaning you showed up like you believed it was true and not actually gotten what you wanted. It's almost impossible. to fully believe it, to fully show up like it's true, to fully decide and not have magic happen to rearrange, right? Jen says, I've fully decided that my one-on-one coaching will be booked solid this year with a wait list. Love it. Yes, tell me what else you guys are deciding in 2019. So that was like a lot of the mindset stuff, like letting the magic happen, making that decision, detaching and surrendering. And so the other thing I want to say is, like, this didn't always look like it was going to happen. So what I mean by that is, it's not like halfway through the year I had paid off half. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, oh, okay, like every step of the way, it looked like it was going to happen. It looked like it was going to happen. It looked like it was going to happen. It didn't really look like it was going to happen for most of the year. Sorry. Don't get me wrong. I was like taking action, making big payments toward it and stuff, but it didn't always look like it was going to happen. And that's something that I really want you to take away, besides the whole like make a decision, get out of how, is know that progress doesn't always look linear and it doesn't always look like it's going to happen, but you have to stay committed to the desire anyway, right? So I see that happen so much with, like, I don't know, launches or something like that in business, right? Like you guys probably all been there at one point or other. I totally have. Like, we go through early bird and we're like, oh, everybody that was going to buy would have bought an early bird. So fuck it. Like, I didn't hit my goal. You're like barely even started, right? You still have, however long your cart's open, but like at least half the time left probably, right? And so it's that piece of faith where it's like, staying committed even when it doesn't perfectly look like it's going to work out, because I know very few people who have had a really big goal that looked like it was going to perfectly work out the whole time. You know what I mean? Right? Like, that just is not how that shit usually works, right? We're like, oh, I just had a goal to save this much. And so, I put away this much every month and it looked like it was going to happen. It was never hard and it was never a struggle and it was never a challenge. It was fine. That's not what it looked like. It looked like most of the time it was not going to happen. And I think every big goal I've ever had, that has been true for. And that's where faith comes in, right? Like, it's not faith unless you have to believe when it looks like it's not going to happen, And so that's something I just really want to share about this too, is like, decide, get out of the how, and then know that probably a lot of the time that you're working toward your big goal, it might look like it's not going to happen. And if you stay in belief, even then, that's when magic starts to happen. That's when the universe shows up and meets you. If the second something looks like you might not get what you want and you let that belief go and you stop feeling those feelings and you pull back, guess what? You ain't never going to get the thing, right? Because it's never going to look perfect or linear. Sasha says, I've decided to have my coaching business and Jade Egg course fully booked. Amazing. Hey, Maggie. She's excited to see you here, Sasha. Hi, April. Aw, thanks for bringing her here, Maggie. Hey, Brandy's Happy New Year. Okay, so if you're watching, I definitely want to hear, what is your big decision for 2019? What are you committed to at the beginning of last year? This was one of mine. Okay, so we talked about a lot of the mindset stuff, right? Here is some of the practical stuff. I think that the first thing I want to say is that I think there's a very big difference between having kind of like a long-term and short-term mindset in business. So what I mean by that is, I think that I see most entrepreneurs kind of feeling like they have to take one or the other. Like, they either have to see results in 90 days or it's going to take 19 years. And like, most of the time, neither are true, right? So I'm like kind of a really big fan lately of this idea of taking more of like a mid-range mindset, where like, it took me 3 years of building this business and 1 year serious about this goal, for it to come to fruition. That is like a blink of an eye of time, but most people aren't willing to commit to something for 3 years. Most people aren't willing to do that, right? They're not willing to play that mid-range game. Does that make sense? So I think one thing I forgot to say, and it's probably really relevant and I should say it. So where this money came from this year is my business, like in large part. most of the excess cash that I made in my business this year, I put aside for this, right? And then the other place it came from is selling my house. So I sold my house recently and made a really smart investment with that. So we're going to talk about smart investments as well, because that was a big part of this. But and that's why I keep saying kind of like it unfolded like I wouldn't have known. Like at the beginning of the year, I hadn't had plans to sell my house. Like I didn't have any idea how much extra income my business was going to generate this year. So anyway, my point is it came from investments that were like long-term, but more like mid-range investments, meaning like I had my house for a few years. I've had this business for a few years. Those investments ended up paying off really big this year, right? And so I think that sometimes we just don't take that mid-range view. We're like, it's either going to take an eternity and it's not worth it, or it has to happen in 90 days. And like, I just don't know any goal that really works out like that most of the time. Like, can magic happen? Certainly. Could like I have like, played a scratch off ticket and like got the 200K? Absolutely. I'm like available for that. Don't get me wrong. But my point is, so often we're looking for the super quick win, or we're expecting it to take forever. And if like you can look at your business, it's like, okay, so like for me, I'll just say what mine was like in year one, I definitely, made a great income, but I was investing a lot more heavily then, in the sense that like, all the costs of like starting a business, I invested heavily in coaching at the beginning of my business. Like I did not have like this like massive amount of extra cash flow to put towards these loans. So it could have been like, oh my God, see, the business was supposed to be the thing that paid off the loans and now it's not going to. Fuck, right? But that would have been like such a short range view. Like, of course, the business has to grow to a point where it can do that. So in my second year, I ended up getting a divorce, which is very expensive, still growing and investing in my business. And I also redid my house, i.e. I invested further in my investment, right? And so I was putting out money, not knowing if I was going to get it back, like having to make these investment choices. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I know if I put X amount into my house and X amount into my business, I promise I'm guaranteed to get it back. It doesn't work like that, right? So second year was unfortunately spending a shitload of money for a divorce, but then also reinvesting in my investments, i.e. my business and my house, right? So then third year is when this all finally started to come together. All of my investments started to pay off even more. All those investments I made in my business and coaching and team and, everything, website, whatever, paid off in a bigger way than they ever have this year. All of those investments I made in my house paid off in a bigger way when I sold it. But that took time. Do you see that progression? I think so often we want to make an investment, we want to see it pay off like immediately. And while I think that's totally possible, and while all of my clients basically make their investment back and more, it doesn't mean the full effect of that investment happens like during that short span of time. Like most of my clients are going to see results for years after we work together. And if they let that build, that will be incredible. Does that make sense? So like for me, the result of my like business trajectory paying off this debt came 3 years later. You know what I mean? Like, and again, like that's both the blink of an eye, but it's also like a decent amount of time that you have to stay patient for, right? Nancy says she's committed to being debt-free and she's finally ready to hit her highest rank in my business. Congrats, Nancy, sorry. I don't know where that even came from in my head. Alicia says, I'm committed to seeing things through. No more creating new because something wasn't working. I'm going to put my head down, stop switching directions, and find out what isn't working and fix it. Analyzing instead of starting over. I love that. That's so good. Brandy says, being patient and expectant is such a tricky space. 100%. I think it's the hardest space. And I also think if you can nail that, if you can like find your sweet spot there, that is the absolute key to success. Like that is the secret of the secrets. You know what I mean? Is like the finding that tension. I said this on the 6-figure success plan training. Finding that tension of being in belief and being patient is the freaking magic. You know what I mean? And listen, it doesn't mean you don't get results along the way. And I think that's something that we miss out on too. Along the way, was I getting great results? Was I building my business? Was I saving cash? Was I chipping away at it? Absolutely, right? But like, I had to see that mid-range goal instead of feeling like it either has to happen now or it's never going to happen or it's going to take 19 years. You know what I mean? So also making the right investments is so key, but not being afraid to invest, I think, was really, really, really important. So not being afraid to heavily invest in my business. Like I invested in a high-end one-on-one coach, like right away in business. I invested in so many things that I like couldn't guarantee a payoff, but I was willing to show up 100% for them, right? Even investing in redoing my house last year, like, right? I mean, obviously that's a good investment and the coaching is a good investment, but at the end of the day, you're never guaranteed any of that. But it's like how you show up for it and what your belief is in it. But like the truth is, the reason I got to pay off all that debt this year is because I've made really like wise investments and I've stayed in belief around them. So both in the house, but very much so in my business. My business was the machine that generated the cash to pay this off this year. And if I hadn't invested in it, I don't think I would be getting these results. Let me rephrase that. I know I wouldn't be getting these results, right? And so I think that a thing that we do, and I'm like saying this with love because we have all been there, is we do shit like this. I'll invest when ... I'll know my business is working when it pays off the debt, right? Like all of this stuff, and we put all of this pressure out here, like, let me see it before I believe it. And like the universe always, always, always works the other way around. Like you will see it when you believe it. And so investing is a huge piece of that. Making smart investments and letting them play out and being patient while they play out is a huge, huge, huge piece of that, right? And so I want to impart that upon you. Like if you're moving into this new year and thinking like, well, what do I do to go to that next level? Like if part of it is investing, like let yourself do it. Like if I had been like, well, here's a really good one. I'm not going to invest in a coach because I want that money to go toward my student loans. Well, let's think about that. That coach was $7,500, right? And if I had put $7,500, that would have barely been a drop in the bucket of the $200K. But what the investment of that $7,500 in myself and my business and how it has paid off over the last 3 years, it's like, I mean, immeasurable, right? And so that's just something I really want to give you permission for, because I don't think that we're always thinking about it that way in entrepreneurship. And I think that thinking about good investments is so, so, so smart, whether that's a coach or team or whatever in your business. Like if you can get in belief around those and you can make really smart investments and like be patient while they pay off, you will see big results. If you're always trying to find the magic pill and you're trying to invest the least you can and have it work out as fast as you can, you're going to be disappointed pretty continuously, honestly, right? And if you're putting off those investments, in favor of like, again, like if I had not made that investment, then like, well, that has to go toward my loan, wouldn't have worked out. So, I mean, listen, I think part of being an entrepreneur is being willing to take risks and letting them play out and pay off. So I think that's another big piece. Here's another thing. I actually listened to this podcast recently, which is funny because I don't listen to, like, I'm very careful with what I'll listen to. Like I don't consume a ton of other people's content. And I really am like exceptionally careful at kind of like what I'll listen to and what I'll put in my brain. But this podcast, kind of, kind of fell into my lap in an interesting way. And it was, an old one. I mean, not super old, but like, let's say over the summer, I think it was recorded. So it was Brooke Castillo, the Life Coach School podcast. And the episode was called Compound Effect. It was just so funny how it fell in my lap recently. But basically in it, she talks about compound effect. And like, usually we think about that in terms of like money or investing, like how, your money makes money and then that money makes money, et cetera, right? But she was talking about it in all these ways, like the compound, she has a podcast, right? That's super popular. And she was talking about the compound effect of like doing the podcast even when it wasn't popular, and like showing up every week and recording it every week. And how, when she was on episode like, 40 or whatever, the return on that time investment wasn't there yet. Now that she's on episode, I don't know what she's on, probably like 300 and something, right? The compound effect of that is crazy. Like the results she can get from one podcast is nuts, I'm sure, right? Same goes with your investment in your business and your both financial and energy investment, right? So like what I did the first 2 years, I probably worked harder the first 2 years of my business than I did this year, but the compound effect paid off in a big, big way this year that let me invest and pay off that debt. Does that make sense? So that's another thing I want to remind you, is that like a lot of this compounds on itself. So if you're, like 90 days in, if you're 3 months in, if you're 9 months in, if you're 2 years in, and you're like, my business isn't paying off my student loan debt yet, cool. Are you making sure that compound effect happens? Are you stacking your results, right? I mean, because it will if you keep staying in it. My business couldn't have done this the first 2 years. Does that make sense? Like it could not have facilitated this, but I didn't really do anything different this year. Does that make sense? Like I probably invested less this year. You know what I mean? I probably worked a little less this year. I mean, I definitely worked less this year actually. But the compound of what I had put in finally like hit that point and has paid off more and more and more, so that I can then put this money into it. So the thing I want to impart upon you is you might have to make short-term sacrifices for that mid-range goal, but it doesn't mean that it's not working. If you're in your second year of business and you can't pay off all this debt yet, it doesn't mean it's not working. You know what I mean? It means you're getting to a point where you're letting it compound, right? Maggie says, okay, this is such a random example, but so illustrates your point. The hubby and I played Monopoly last night, and I mortgaged myself to buy a bunch of properties. It looked like I was behind in the middle of the game, but I was able to put houses on them. Then every time he landed on one of those, it was a huge payment. My hubby, who is very systems oriented in his thinking, saw that I was going to win way before it actually happened, and then I did. This is the same in business. In the middle, it might not look like winning, but you are setting yourself up for success by investments you make that lead to a greater payoff later. Perfect illustration. Perfect illustration. And like that is what investment looks like, right? Like when I invested that, $7,500 in my first like one-on-one coach, it didn't look like I was ahead of the game, right? It looked like, oh, I just took a bunch of money that I could have put toward my debt and like racked up my debt even more. You know what I mean? It didn't look like I was ahead. Even the whole 6 months we worked together, it didn't look like I was ahead, right? You know what I mean? But over time, over the 3 years, it has. Maggie says, hearing you quote the life coach school gives me life. This is one of my favorite episodes and totally applies in relationships and marriage too. You're starting 2019 on fire. Thank you, Maggie. It's so funny. Like it actually, I've been having like this weird thing with my iTunes, like where like it'll open up and a podcast will randomly start playing. And then this one randomly downloaded, which is so weird. But anyway, love it. It was so good. It was like I was just meant to hear that episode. So that's something, I don't remember what episode it was. I think it was like 230 something. So I highly recommend you guys check that out. But it was called Compound Effect. So good. And it's exactly what I'm talking about here. Waiting, giving your investments, whether that's time or money, time to pay off is so important. So another thing that I did is that because I was so clear on my goal, really practically, I said no to other things when I could have said yes to them. So this is a really big lesson in business too. I said no to other things when I could have said yes to them. So there's this Steve Jobs quote that I love, and he talks about how everybody thinks that focus is focusing on one thing, but focus is actually saying no to the 100 other good ideas that come up while you're focused on something, right? And so when I think about my goal to pay off this debt, my focus was paying off this debt. But other opportunities or things I wanted to do came up during that time when I was making this money, right? Maggie says, this is the episode, thelifecoachschool.com/236. And she quotes it in one of her relationship mastery resources. Perfect. I love that. Okay, cool. So go listen to that because it's really good. And also check out Maggie's relationship mastery resources too. Right. But so I think that really practically it meant like, when a trip that I, could take, right? Because if you think about paying off $200K, like I had a lot of cash coming in the door, right? So it would have been easy to be like, oh, I want to take this trip. I want to do this thing. I want to invest in this, next thing in my business, whatever. But because I was focused this year and clear on it, I said no to other things, even when I could have said yes. And I can't stress that enough because I see this so often in business, both in investments and in like just practical decisions. Like, saying no to the next idea. Like if you're focused on, Maggie, I'm going to use you, Maggie, and I have been working together and she got so focused on one-on-one this year. And she said to me recently, like, it's amazing because what I realized is when I focused on one-on-one, it focused on me and her one-on-one took off. You know what I mean? She's finding like super high-end clients, right? And so that means she had to say no to doing a course, to like probably doing 500 other ideas that popped up for her in that time, or income stream ideas or whatever. So it doesn't mean she couldn't have done those. It doesn't mean she didn't have the audience or the opportunity to do a course, but she said no even when she could have said yes. And she kept making the investment in her goal and staying focused on that goal. And so that's another piece that was really big for me this year, is saying no when I could have said yes, because I think it's easy to say no when you have to say no, right? Like if you don't have the cash coming in, or, you can't make the time investment, it's easy to say no. Saying no when you can say yes is so much harder, but it's where the magic happens. So for me, that really looked like not investing in certain things that I maybe would have wanted to, not taking that extra trip, that kind of thing, because I wanted this more than I wanted that. But it's that mid-range thinking that I keep talking about. I wanted this more than I wanted that. So it was not going to be a short-term win, but it doesn't have to take forever either, right? So over the course of the year, I wanted this more than I wanted that. And so in a year, I got the thing. It's like that mid-range thinking I keep talking about. Does that make sense? So if you take that outlook in your business this year, if you enter 2019 with the outlook of like, what's my goal at the end of this year and how do I keep making decisions and keep saying no to other things that don't get me to that goal, you will look back at the end of 2019 and be like, holy shit, that was bananas. What happened when I stayed committed, right? Maggie says, yes, when I focused on one-on-one, it focused on me and I put off other projects totally. Exactly. And you can think about investment as whether that's money or time or energy or whatever. So Maggie invested fully in one-on-one in every sense of those. You know what I mean? I invested in paying off my debt in every sense of those time, money, energy decisions, right? Brandy said that is a really great point. Thank you. So that was another piece, is like, if you have the debt thing going on, if you have another big goal, like how are you going to make that decision and then stay relentlessly focused on it? Maybe even when it looks like it's not going to work out. Remember, like we talked about before, right? And then here's the other thing, like I don't want to make it seem like I didn't do anything fun. I still enjoyed and I saved and like had good experiences, but I was clear on my goal. And I think that's very true in business, where it's like you can rest and you can enjoy. It doesn't mean that like because you have this goal, you're just only working forever toward it and you're never like doing anything fun or anything like that. But if you stay super clear and committed, it works. Does that make sense? So it's not like I didn't spend money or I didn't enjoy or I didn't have fun or whatever. It's just that I said no to other things when I could have said yes because this was the bigger goal, right? Suzanne says she just decided to focus on one-on-one as well. Beautiful. Hey, Natalie, thank you for joining me. So I think like to kind of like tie this in a bow and recap, here are some things I want you to take away. mindset wise, I want you to take away that if you have to make a full body decision, right, about what you want. And you have to stay committed to that decision, even when it looks like it might not happen, even when it's difficult, even when it means you have to say no to something else. If you do that mindset wise, your actions will always be dictated by your decisions. So the action piece gets easier. Saying no to something gets easier. Putting that money toward the debt gets easier because I'm so decided, I'm so committed, right? Number 2, getting out of how it's going to happen. So for me, I feel like I didn't even share this, but I think you guys know this for some reason. I don't know why. But for me, like, I made a lot of extra cash in my business. If you watch my 6-figure success plan, we added, over 6 figures of income with one of our income streams this year. All of that went to my debt, which was amazing that I was able to add that income stream and put it all toward that debt, right? If you're not sure what I'm talking about, there's live streams in the group on that. If you type in 100K, probably it'll come up. Maybe I can link them on here too. But basically, like, I added an income stream by taking 10% of revenue earned with my clients. So basically, I help my clients make a bunch of money this year, and then I got that money and I put it toward the loans, right? So that is one of the pieces. The second piece is that I ended up selling my house. So at the beginning of this year, that was not even like remotely on the horizon. Like, it wasn't there at all. It wasn't even a consideration of mine, really. Certainly I knew the house was an asset that I had invested in, and certainly I had invested in upgrading it, but I did not have the plan to like cash in on that investment anytime soon necessarily, because I need a place to live, right? And over the course of this year, I met my wonderful boyfriend, fell in love, started dating. He asked me to move in with him, and all of that really facilitated this too, because the sale of that investment in my house paid off, and I was able to put the rest toward the loans and finish paying them off. So my point in staying out of the house, I couldn't have even possibly guessed at the beginning of the year that that's how it would have happened. And also not really fucking caring. I don't care that all of that didn't come from my business. Right, my business probably made about $375 last year. I still have to do numbers, but let's say between $375 and $400, right? And then add the sale of the house, and so it was a $500K year. But I could choose to look at that well, I had a $400K year business, and then whatever with the house. But I have been really working on this because one of my friends actually called me out on this and was like, no, you made a fucking smart investment. You cashed in on it this year. You made a good business investment. You cashed in on it. So it's it all counts. Do you know what I mean? And I think that that's another thing I want to say for this is stay open to however it's going to happen. But if you make that decision, it is crazy how things will rearrange themselves, right? So my word for last year was love, and I made the decision to pay off my loans. Holy fuck, I fell in love, and it actually facilitated me paying off those loans. But I decided, do you know what I mean? And then I stayed committed, it was going to happen, it was going to be true. So hope that mindset piece is really helpful, because that I think has been the biggest determining factor. Okay, so decide, get clear, let go of the how, let it happen how it happens, but keep showing up like it's true. Practical, make good investments and don't be scared to invest, right? Your investments need to pay off for you. The way that most wealth is created is through investment. Do you know what I mean? Most wealth is not created through work. It's created through investment, right? So don't be scared to invest in your business. Don't be scared to make those investments and take that mid-range goal. It doesn't mean they have to pay off in 19 years, but they're probably not going to pay off in 90 days, right? If you take that mindset, you're going to be absolutely shocked at what is possible for you in your business. If you take the mindset that investing is risky and it might not serve you, you're probably going to have that experience and it's going to be difficult. But I cannot tell you enough how much smart investments have paid off in every aspect of my business, both in money and time, everything, right? Practically remember the idea of the compound effect. your business in year 1 or 2 is probably not going to be at the point to make this happen. Listen, some are. I definitely have clients that have absolutely killed it, and that is true for them, and it's possible, but it's okay if it's not. Like, it wasn't for me, and that's okay. But I had to keep believing that it was compounding instead of feeling like, well, I didn't make $1 million in a year, so bye. I have to think of something else to make me $1 million in a year so I can pay these off. Fuck that. I had to stay committed to this so I could make $400K this year and pay those off. Does that make sense? What else? I said no to other things when I could have said yes. That's a really big practical thing. Stay focused, stay committed, stay super clear, keep showing up like it's true. Then a couple other practical questions I got. Some people were asking me, like, was I paying the minimum? Did I do income-based repayment? Here's what I personally did. I consolidated all of my loans, and then I did income-based repayment, and I doubled that every month. So whatever my income-based number was, like my monthly payment, I paid double that, because what I realized is a lot of times you're just paying the interest, right? And so I had to get past that to start actually paying it down, because with loans and debt like that, ultimately, like, you could just be paying on the interest forever and barely hitting it. So what I realized is, like, if I can get way more going to that, like, ultimately I'm saving myself a ton of money over time. Like, so paying all this off now versus in 10 years, the amount of interest that I save myself over those 10 years is freaking staggering. I think I calculated it out, and it's like, like $20K or something a year. I can't even remember, but it's crazy. I think it's a little less than that, actually. But my point is, a lot of what I did practically was to get payments like going towards something other than interest. But I did do the income-based repayment because it felt good to me to have that. But I always doubled it up. Okay, what did Maggie say? Maggie says, I really think that what you do with your clients, and one of the best things you have done with me, is you see that we are winning when it doesn't look like it, because we are so in it. Like my husband did during Monopoly, and it wasn't even a question. It was a certainty, and that is so valuable and helps you keep moving forward. Oh, thank you, Maggie. I love that. I think that's so true. Like, when we're in it, it can be hard to see it for ourselves, but we do need that person saying, like, hey, I don't know if you know, but like, this is how this works. Like, this is progress, right? Brooke talked about that in that podcast too. She was talking about how, in the Compound Effect podcast, how like when you like work out, like super consistently, the compound effect is that you're in amazing shape and like nothing's hard, and the classes you go to feel amazing, whatever. When you stop and then you go back, like, it looks like you're not winning at first. Like, you're sore every time, you're miserable, you're tired, right? It looks like you're not winning until it compounds and you are. And I think that's so true in business. Like, I feel like if you talk to most people that have created a ton of success in business, it has been over time, and most of the time they will say, I'm really not doing anything that different now than I was doing then. It's just working better now. Like, it's compounded. I have a bigger audience. I have more people that I'm sharing it with. I have, like, all these things have compounded. So the things I was doing before are just paying off a ton more. And I think that that's what we miss so often in business, is we're looking for that magical thing. And like, it just is not there. It's just that over time, it's going to pay off more and more and more. And like, working out is the same too, right? Like, if you're 100 pounds overweight, like, you could be doing the same workout as you'll be doing when you lose those 100 pounds. But like, at that point, like, the definition you'll have and whatever will be totally different. You know what I mean? And so that is what I have found to be true in business. Again, like, I probably worked less this year, but I did a lot of the same thing. Well, I don't know why I keep saying probably. I absolutely worked less this year, but we were still using a lot of the same strategies that I used since day one. The compound effect has just been incredible on that this year, right? And so I want you guys to really take that away from this, is like, this is how you can get big results in business. This is how you can pay off debt. This is how you can do it, is like, if you stay focused, if you let it compound, and if you stop looking for that quick fix, but let it build, right? Kara says, looking forward to watching the replay since I missed the beginning. Good. Kara, let me know what you think. Okay, so what I want to hear from you is, what are you absolutely deciding on and focused on in 2019? I want you guys to say it and commit to it, because I think There's just so much power in that. Like I saw my whole world change this year because I verbally committed to this, because I wrote this down, because I decided, right? And so I want you to do the same thing. Hope this was useful for you. Happy to answer any other practical questions on this. Oh, I did have one other question, which was like, how did I save while doing this? Honestly, that part was easy and difficult. And what I mean by that is like, that was a difficult thing for me actually, because it felt like a weird balance deciding. And so I've talked about this a ton before, and everyone knows I'm like a huge fan, but I love Digit. Let me just type it in, Digit. Basically, it tracks your spending and it saves for you. And so I had this thing that was like saving for me without me having to do it. And then I was like in charge of the student loan stuff and paying towards that. And that was really helpful because it goes to the point of focus. I didn't have to focus on the saving because Digit was doing that for me. I was focused on the loans. Does that make sense? So hope that was helpful. Again, if you have any more practical questions, super happy to answer that. If there's any other money questions, mindset questions, I mean, I think I could probably do a whole other one on like, upping the money mindset game around this, which I'm happy to do. But ultimately, this was totally a mindset thing as a starting point, and totally surrendering and detaching to how it could work out, but also staying super, super committed and strategic about how I was making this happen along the way. So if you want to have big results in 2018, that is exactly how to do it. And it's finding that tension and that balance between patience and certainty. So I hope that you guys have an amazing new year. Any questions you have, let me know. Happy New Year. I love and appreciate you all. I'm loving your partnership applications, by the way. They are incredible. I am so excited to invest in one of you. I feel like that for me is an investment. I'm investing my time, expecting an outcome on the end. So if you haven't filled out your application yet, they're due the 7th. alituplife.com/partnership, I think. I'll double check that. If not, it's the pin post and it's the cover photo, so you can find it there too. But so excited to invest in one of you this year. I'm so excited to help one of your big dreams for 2019 come true. And I'm so excited for us to make some money together. So hope you guys have a beautiful day. I will talk to you soon, and have a happy 2019. Bye.